I'll just introduce you to our panel. So that's really to share insight from the things that Jamie's raised for us today in this 2-hour session. And the panel is represented by somebody from business community and also an author and practitioner. So first of all, we have Elaine, who's sitting at the back. So Elaine, following a business career spanning over 40 years, from startups to managing multi-million-pound budgets with over 200 team members, Elaine burned out in 2009 and in 2015 was given 1 year to live with stage 4 cancer. An expert in behavioural psychology, she now specialises in helping individuals to avoid serious illness and how to reverse it through an integrative approach if they are poorly. So Elaine is our business expert. We also have Kate O'Brien here from Ireland. Kate is a well-known health and wellbeing author. Kate has written 8 books now, I believe. Is that correct? Or is it 9? It's 9 books.
It's okay.
9, okay. Apologies. So Kate combines an honours science degree and postgraduate qualifications in dietetics and cosmetic science. She's over 20 years in the industry, in the spa skincare industries in Europe and Asia. She lived in Hong Kong for many years, which is when we first connected, I believe. And she's now moved back to Dublin with her husband and her 3 young children. So you will have, if you're into the health and wellbeing arena, most likely will have come across Kate's name. And then finally we have Laura Grant, who's representing Voice from Community. Laura is a local lady in Nottingham and founded the social enterprise Freedom Foundation in 2017 with her friend and business partner Stacey Green, who some of you may know, in Nottingham. Years of experience in the third sector and across the arts, they wanted to help children face the pressure of how social media is contributing to mental health challenges. So they use creative arts, the Freedom Foundation, which educates children to deal with emotions, anxiety and depression, recognising that social media can affect mental well-being and giving them the tools to use it in a positive way. Jamie, thanks again. We've all been enjoying your analogies, and chakras turned into anuses and yeah, and the rest. But just really picking up on the theme of vulnerability and the essence of that. When was the last time you realised that you were wrong about something, and what was that like?
Oh God, definitely today. Here I was wrong about something. I have a rule: never, ever, ever lie. I don't know why. It feels like this game, this theme park of curriculum and unexpected, like this game show. It feels like the game is see if you can win or see if you can get your things out without ever lying. It just seems to be, for some reason, important rule. So I'm really strict. I'm much more strict with my kids about lying than I am about things that other people would be super strict about. And yet today I realised that anything that fast and wrong, that today there needed to be a lie, and I did lie for a reason.
Okay, and can you share that?
Yeah, I could. So my middle girl has been having a bit of just worries and a bit of like going a bit loopy in certain areas that as 15, 16-year-old girls do around boys and Instagram or whatever. She called me from school at about 12:50 or about 12, saying I really need a hug. I just want to tell you about something that's going on. She had PE next and then lunch. So I said, how about I swing back from school, spring you out of it, say you've got a dentist appointment and we go and get lunch.
Oh, cool.
That's not a lie, that's being human.
No, the dental appointment was a lie.
Yeah, but
I had to pretend that
being
there was a dental
human.
appointment. But I thought, once a fucking dentist, that's such a small one. So
That's allowed.
I was wrong to have such a sort of fascist blanket rule there.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I have been quite blanket about.
Okay. So there is flexibility with your concepts, with the Jamie Cato concepts. Is that right?
It's all an arrow. It's like every idea you have a fixed vision, which can morph into a better fixed vision at any moment. You're always working with the latest information. So whatever is the truth now is the truth now. Gandhi was once on a walk, hundreds of thousands of people behind him, and like halfway along he was like, actually no. And his guys came up to him and like, Gandhi, Mahatma, it's like a few 100,000 people. He goes, yeah. He goes, my responsibility is to truth, not consistency.
Yeah. Laura, how about yourself?
Well, I think, for a number of us, obviously one of the things that's come out is about parenting and questioning yourself about parenting. And I recently became a sole parent, so my questioning of parenting is being constantly challenged all the time. And it was interesting what you were talking about, obviously what it's about, particularly from the beginning in your childhood. And I feel like I make mistakes sometimes with my children, and I've one of the things I've really realised tonight is that that's because I'm going against what my mum would do. So I think some of the mistakes that I feel that I'm making are because of that, and because what I believe, rather than listening to what I feel my children need in that moment. So that's been really good for me to clarify that.
Yeah. Kate, Jamie brought up the essence of anxiety and how it shows up in our body in different ways, mind, body, emotions in different ways. So how do you know when you're starting to go into stress or anxiety? And what's your surest way of dealing with that?
I feel it in my tummy, around my solar plexus, and when we were doing the exercise earlier, that's exactly where I feel it, always. Same with if I'm doing, any project, speaking, whatever, it's my tummy, always. It's that gut, as somebody mentioned earlier about that gut instinct, to me is huge, and I'm much better dealing with it now, and the same with stress and anxiety. And I have learned a huge amount through the years, through my work, thankfully, and people I've spoken to and research I've done. But I also, over the years, have got more and more into yoga, and to me that's what grounds me every time I go on the mat. And if I'm feeling particularly anxious, whatever, even 5 minutes on my yoga mat, and I can just feel my solar plexus area, and that the sun starts to shine. Literally, I can visualize the sun starting to shine out from it, and for me that's hugely important, and it works. And I just do my breathing, and it works almost every time.
Elaine, now you've managed many businesses and lots of people.
Is this about mistakes?
Well, it's really anxiety, looking at anxiety and your surest way to deal with that.
I don't get anxious, very anxious. I get excited. I don't get anxious because what's the worst that can happen? Nothing, is it? So I get excited, and it's here with me. It's not so much here, it's more here, and it's excitement rather than anxiety. And I honestly don't really feel anxious, ever. I used to, post-cancer, no.
Okay. So things have changed.
So things have changed, yeah. My outlook on life has changed considerably. Yeah. And my daughter's a senior HR person in business, and she often says to me, "Mum, if you were in business today, you would be sacked. You'd have to sack yourself." Because basically I'm straightforward, straight talking. If you don't like it, there's the door, kind of thing. And that's how I've always been. And if you can't work with people in a kind-hearted, loving, carefree way, and allowing them to be who they are, and nurturing them to the point where actually you're losing them as employees because you're helping them to grow and kind of send them off on their way. And that's what I've always done. But apparently today I would be accused of it being discriminatory in so many different ways, in a positive way. But the law has changed since I was a lad.
Okay. Are there any? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna, I think that some of this that we've talked about tonight is amazing for anxiety and those moments of anxiety, and the work that we do is with children. And those of you that are around young people will know that anxiety within young people is huge, and whether that's we do a lot of work around social media, but just the pressures that are put on young people now. And these are the tools that we need to be sharing with children and young people, so that in that moments of anxiety they're able to bring themselves down. And I think that that's really powerful for children and the future generation to recognise these things.
And what are your practices around social media? So what are the actual things that you would implement when you talk about
personally?
That? Yeah.
So I think it's important to have your own guidance around how you know, social media for a lot of us is very important. You know, run my own business, so that's really important. You know, it's a great way to, I've lived all over the world, so it's a great way to get information from families and other people about what's happening. But it's also really easy to just sit there and scroll for hours and just, you know, lose time. And certainly through the work that I've done over the last few years, you know, learnt about the impact that can have on your own well-being, on your relationships and the people around. So I just have real parameters around, you know, doing that, you know, 2 or 3 times a day to see what's going on, and also then kind of have family guidance around, you know, basic thing, no phones at the table, not at night, and those kind of things, to not get too sucked into it.
Yeah. Jamie, what are your thoughts? So you have your business, social media as a platform to raise awareness of your message, and but then also practices with your family as well. So how do you manage it all?
I don't know, just day one day at a time, like any addiction. I have the excuse that my business is really based out of social media. You know, like it's a perfect for my kind of artist to have an image and 100 words that just says it. It's tailor-made for me. You know, a couple of thoughts bouncing around my empty head. Suddenly I'm doing an instructional video. It's all just like little bitty things that are just very much in the flow of my ADHD hunter, not farmer mentality. So I really like it. It's made me very creatively productive, because sometimes I'm like, I've got a client, I do a lot of one-on-one work with people or in a company, and something will come up, and just by the way that someone was going through something, it will make me say something a certain way. Oh, actually, you know, like it'll make something click by whatever you're dealing with someone, and there you can immediately write it for everybody then, and go, hey, you know, when this happens, actually, like one thing I've noticed recently, which has been huge, is that we're beginning to turn towards these fragile inner parts of ourselves, our inner child, or whatever you want to say. People are beginning to start to, instead of rejecting that feeling, to go, oh, hello, you know, this is a beginning. But still, it is mainly coming from a place of something hurts, I need to do something to stop it hurting. There's still a kind of getting rid of pain thing going on. And there's still a way of like, if I attend to the inner child, it'll shut up and I can get on with my life. It's still like kind of neutralizing pain. The next step of that, which I've discovered recently, which has been really powerful, is to not only turn towards our inner child when they're in a crisis. That it is a big step forward that we will turn towards it in a crisis, but don't wait for it to be in a crisis to turn towards it, because otherwise it has to keep creating crises to get your attention. And if you start when you're playing with your children, or you're enjoying a movie, or someone says something really pompous and you want to do an eye roll with them, bring them in on all the fun things, bring them in on the great ice cream, the sunset, playing with the kids in the sea, on all the nice things, make it part of it then, and then it doesn't always need to create a crisis to be included in your life.
Okay, so why do you think we're having such an issue around social media? Why is you know, Joe Public having, you know, we're having the conversations that we're having, and it's leading to where we are?
It's an extension of where it used to be a problem with just the media, that you would just have lots of airbrushed women or aspirational male gadgets, and if you didn't have that thing or that BMW or that waistline or bust or whatever, if you didn't have those things that weren't real anyway, by the way, they were airbrushed. There is no human that actually looks like that, but it still makes everyone feel terrible and compare, and you know, it started as that, and now because everyone can broadcast and everyone can have an app to airbrush themselves, everyone is their own little magazine now. So it's just an extension of that anxiety that we need to keep up appearances in order to be loved. And we have very superficial values that our culture, our media keeps us in those superficial values, because that's how we get into buy stuff. The reason the cosmetics industry and many industries like it just are ransacking women's wallets is because they have alienated women from their bodies. They've made you feel like if you've got wrinkles, that's not okay, even though wrinkles are beautiful. But no, they realise women are worried about the wrinkles, so they make a television ad where the husband comes in and she's at the thing, and he comes and kisses her right on the temple and doesn't notice her wrinkles. Every woman's happy, they buy Clairol moisturiser. Because we've alienated people from their bodies. Everybody now, the extension of that is the same fascistic either treatment of how we look, treatment of how happy we look in the world, so no one will think we've lost it, or that we're a failure, or that we're vulnerable. All the things that we're trying to hide, which actually give us the intimacy. The wrong rule book we've been sold, which is aspire to look rich, aspire to look successful, aspire to look beautiful, aspire to look young, aspire to never look weak, shameful, to just show the little shop window of yourself even more. That is how our culture is built, and that's why we do what we do, so that we can embody something different.
Thank you.
But
Okay,
can I just add on that? I
yes.
think it's people were always looking to be happy, trying to be happy, and maybe if I go to this place, and even when it comes to the wellness industry, and if you're going on a retreat, be it a yoga retreat or mindfulness, whatever retreat, oh maybe this will sort me out, I'll try this one and this will make me happy, and then they're striving further and further for happiness, but at the end of the day, as we know, and other people are copying onto it, it is actually all inside of us, as you know, going back to what we did earlier, and it's actually accessing it inside of us. I think a lot of us find problems with, but I think we are beginning to get it, and I think the message is starting to catch on, and even when it comes to, I write a lot about skincare and beauty, and I've studied it, and I think women in particular, and it makes me so sad that that's the way women are, and they feel trying to get rid of their lines, and actually women are destroying their skin with the amount of acid they put on their skin, and they're told to use the acid because it gets rid of the fine lines and they look smoother and cleaner, and it actually doesn't. It destroys the actual skin, and it makes me so sad.
And it's probably all made by men.
Not all of it, not all of it, but some of it is.
I mean, I'm not saying that just to be against men, but it's like it's not. It's a very like false.
Yeah.
It's not for the women really.
No, and also it's the whole body thing, which I am really, it makes me even more sad that women are so obsessed with, having that body when they get older, and having that perfect body, and none of us really do, and I think it's a matter of just accepting us for what we are and what we have and how amazing our bodies are, and just enjoying them and enjoying our food, not starting a diet every Monday because you want, I can't do this. And I see my own friends in their 50s and they're still every Monday starting a new diet, and it's so sad, and they haven't found that happiness. They think by losing a bit of weight they'll be happy.
That's the thing, is that the search for happiness is totally groovy.
But
whose model of happiness are you following? TSB's TV
Instagram or
So what's the answer? To return it all?
Have a true notion of how to have a realistic. Find out what really fulfills you healthily, and make that your happiness, not the silly aspirational nonsense of our culture and worship of quick money media.
Maybe listening to that yin voice.
Yeah.
And
I know
so
it's true
also
for you.
an acceptance of you're not always going to be happy. There is an
Yeah.
acceptance of
Mm.
we're not
Yeah.
always. There is going to be moments.
And
of,
what is happiness
sadness
at the end of the day?
Yeah.
What is happiness?
Krishnamurti, they said, you want to know my secret? I don't mind what happens. It's like, be okay when there are happy days, when there are sad days. It's a cloud. Clouds change. The idea that we're always supposed to be sunshiny and happy is toxic. Sometimes it's stormy days, sometimes there are cloudy days. Can you sit there and go, cloudy day, I think I'll stay in. But be with the kind of day it is rather than make the day wrong.
So when we step off and we step into this space and we start to fulfill ourselves from the inside out, we can start to lose people as well, and our tribe changes, and it can become unfamiliar, and we might feel lonely and we might feel isolated. So, what is the motivation? What would you say is the motivation, and what can it look like on the other side?
Well, the motivation is that being yourself means you're not exhausting yourself being fake for other people and feeling unfulfilled, both exhausted and unfulfilled. That's the man. I talk about this in the Ramdas film, which is, it's so funny that we wear masks for the kinds of people that need us to wear masks to feel comfortable around us, and it's like, those aren't our people. If they need you to wear a mask to hang out with them, they're not your people. So we're exhausting ourselves wearing a mask for the very people we don't want to hang out with. It's a really weird lose-lose kind of system, So I say, gently take off the masks, see who stays. They're the people that love you, they're your people. If they don't stay, even if they're immediate family, you didn't need them.
Yeah.
I've actually divorced my brother.
Have you?
Yeah, I divorced my brother a few years ago because we didn't get on as children. Why should we get on as adults? We've got completely different views in life and behaviours and so on and so forth. And so why should I? Again, it's another sort of cancer thing. When you have something like that happen in your life, you look
you look at everything differently. You know, your whole, you know, you're wearing different glasses. And yes, there's been lots of people that have gone by the wayside, but my energy every day is fabulous. Every single day, I don't care if it's raining, it's sun shining, it's snowing. Every day is a perfect day in my life. Every single day. It's not negotiable. It is.
Jamie, I wanted to touch on something that you said in your presentation. So you were about to guide us through a process, and you didn't want to use the word meditation. I teach meditation, and it's a word I use a lot. So I just wanted to explore that. What is that for you? Is
it's like the word. You say the word meditation from a room full of people who have done varying levels of beginner, medium, advanced retreats, meditations. Some have done Vipassana, some have done something more spiritual kind of meditation, which was maybe connected with Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or something like that. Other people have done more well-being meditations, or they've got really one of those funky new apps which you listen to rain and meditate, whatever. When you say meditation, some people mean one of those things, some people mean contemplation, some people mean trying to spiritually reach a state of samadhi, some people mean, well, like, it's one of those words that isn't really helpful in that way, and can be as limiting. That's why I try and like change the labels of things, like particularly things like depression and grief. Sometimes I'm driving along in the car and I get a wave of hopelessness, despair and grief. The first thing I do is I take on what I would normally call hopelessness, despair and grief. It's so loaded with other old despair and grief in movies, or the friend's grief that I know about, or all the connotations of those words. So I take off those labels and I say, I'm feeling schlumpf. A word that means nothing. Just make up a word. I'm feeling wuggahumpftemuff. What does wuggahumpftemuff feel like? Suddenly, it might still not feel that nice, but it's certainly not the painful drama of grief, hope and despair that I was having. So I sit there with schlumpf for a little bit, and I go, schlumpf feels like this, and it's like, it slightly new, changes it into something fascinating, into something which may still not be that nice, but it's like, it's like kinky. And then if you want to go even further, you can go, okay, let's be super ninjas. I'm going to say maybe it's love. What if it's one of the 10,000 names of the goddess, and love isn't always fluffy and tender and nice, and love is sometimes like, so I'm going to call it love now. This feeling is love. And then you explore that, so you realise how there is so much breadth for how we're looking at it to have the experience, and pain doesn't need to be suffering. Gabrielle Roth, who I love, who invented the 5 rhythms dancing meditation, she would never say that. When people came and told her their sad stories and all the hopelessness and despair, the things they'd been through, she would go, wonderful, I expect great art from you.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Laura, how about with the kids? Do you have to change language with children?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, giving children the opportunity to explore emotions and move around emotions is really important. Again, with the world that we live in, and all the messages that are fed, and particularly teenagers with everything that they're struggling with, and we use music and dance in our sessions, which is an amazing platform to explore all of these things. We use songwriting a lot. So we give them the opportunity to share. We'll do individual work with songwriting, and particularly in terms of emotions, one of the things we do with the little children is we have a rainbow chart. So we explore that in terms of being, talking to them. It's okay, it's great if you're happy, but actually it's okay to move around that rainbow, move around those colours, and come back to those happy places. But it's okay to visit.
And each one has a different song. I mean, if you're making songwriting with them, the purple blue song is different from the pink and shiny yellow song. Each one has a different voice.
Yeah, and of course for individuals, how pop will make somebody feel will be very different to how R&B will make them feel. So having that opportunity to explore those different genres as well is really powerful.
It was amazing that movie came out, a Disney movie by Pixar as well, called Inside Out, and it had all the characters in the head. I mean, that was great, but what was really amazing was the message of the whole movie was, don't throw away your sadness. It was sadness that saved the day, not joy. And I was like, wow, that message went out to all those kids. Fucking great. I was so happy with that ending.
I wanted to open it up to a Q&A to the audience as well. So does anyone have any questions for any of the panel? Anything that you'd like to... Yes.
Is this kind of sort of Jamie, maybe for Katie as well? Is this kind of fairly typical of your audiences for your workshops? They're kind of a certain age, but not all of us.
Mixture.
Nearly all women tonight. I mean, is that?
It's often nearly all women.
And what about? Is that a problem?
I don't know. Like, the men are doing quite a lot of stuff at the moment. They've got a very different remit. Not very, very different, but I mean, more and more men coming. That when I was in Greece recently, it was about 50-50, but generally it's 4/5 women. But that's a whole huge subject. Healing the male-female wound. There is historically a lot less permission for men to be here. Even the most well-intentioned ones. And out of all the well-intentioned ones that do want to wake up their yin and play with their children and connect with their wives or whatever, out of that lot, the ones which have only switched on the yin are in sort of pastel trousers, and it can go too yin and you lose your spine, you lose your male leadership. So it's a funny time for men at the moment to find their sweet spot of being yin enough and vulnerable enough, but actually a collapsing crying man is not sexy, no matter how much it was great stroking his hair last week. It's a bit of a kind of Russian roulette for a man to show his vulnerability, because the woman can really want to be holding him in his vulnerability, but her system of glands is shutting down. Even though her mind is, no, I want to be the modern woman and the vulnerable man, but she's suddenly not feeling attracted. So it's like it is a bit of a minefield that we do have to tread quite carefully with. And for men to have permission to be here, and also to heal the crimes of our ancestors between the men and women, is actually my next project, the heal of the male and female wound on the planet.
Why do you
Just a
think
little thing.
Greece was so different? Why do you think it was?
I think it was because it was like a 5-day thing, and it was a lot of the men work with me longer. Like the clients that I've got that work with me month after month are men. I have many more female clients, but they come for lots of one-off, and then they've got it and they go. So it's like the men like a longer thing. They seem to.
When I worked for 4 or 5 years as a nutritionist or dietitian, and I always remember male versus female, and what I found was the men, if they were on, if 90% of it was always weight loss, which got a bit boring after a while, but if you gave men a plan, like 99.9% of them would follow it to the T, literally, and they'd be looking for the brand name of what tin of beans they should buy or whatever, whereas the women will just be a lot more lax about it. And I found with the men that they would come back and they would have, in whatever period of time, that generally they would have lost more weight compared to the women. I'm generalising, but that's in my overall experience. That's what I found, which I thought was quite interesting.
I think maybe also the core food things is a bit more expensive, and just men these days tend to have more money than women. They're paid more per job, even in our culture, and they've been breadwinners often longer. Often women have started their career later, like in their 30s because of the kids or whatever. So they just, per capita, I think maybe can afford a core food trip more.
Any other questions? Yes, here at the front.
I was just wanting to know about your connections with the film that you were about to do with Ramdas.
Finished, not about to do.
So that's
I've
already
just been 5 weeks in America touring it.
amazing.
Yeah.
So what kind of drew you to his work, and just a little bit about that experience?
He's just
that's
hilarious.
Amazing.
I've loved him since I was 20. He's hilarious. He's the treasure of his the way he says it is so on the money and so funny and so warm and so unpretentious and so ungrandiose, so real, so wise, so really thought it through, credible, did years and years and years of all those practices, and thought it through. He isn't just like me, like a couple of ideas bouncing around. He's really done decades of sitting in Burma, meditating 8 hours. He's gone there. He was a Harvard professor, kicked out for psychedelics when the American government wanted to keep LSD for the army. They kicked him out of Harvard. He's an amazing guy, and I've just found his tapes, his content, to be the best stuff out of all of it, for my flavour. for what goes into me. It's just really cool, funny, playful, Sacred Fool, and he was in 2 of my films, One Giant Leap and What About Me, along with a lot of other wisdom keepers and cool people around the world. And I just thought, as he was in his 80s, I just thought to myself, the films with him in are good, but they're not funny. They're quite serious. The people that have done little films or bits of him, it's like, it's just still a bit busy being spiritual. And I think no one's made the film that just gets his teaching, his saying it, how funny he is. Not a biography about his life, just his transmission. And I just called them up and I said, this needs to exist before he dies. I want to make the one-stop random. He's going to die, and I want this to exist for everyone, forever. And they agreed. So I think it came out, and it's been doing amazingly well in the cinema in America.
When do we get to
Yeah,
see it?
2020, if we get some cinemas here to take it. I don't know what the distributors. Easier in America than here for a Ramdas movie, but it may do. And eventually Netflix or whatever at the end of the line when it's been done doing its thing. It's very sweet. I mean, I could come back in and do a little screening next time, like a secret thing. We could maybe get something. We do like a Christmas secret mulled wine and LSD.
I think you would end up filling the whole of Broadway cinema actually.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone knows anyone there, hook me up.
We do.
Yeah.
We all know them there.
We have to make it like a private party, because
You don't want it to be too big.
and also there's the thing with the Oscars and certain film festivals where if you've shown it officially in certain places, it means you can't be considered for certain things.
We won't mess with that then.
So we're Oscar material next year, or we will.
I think it's being applied for maybe more for music than for the film, because the music in the film is amazing.
I think there's a lady at the back, is that right?
I just wondered what happens at a shadow workshop.
What happens at a shadow
Good
workshop?
question.
Here's an example. We go into those voices that we're talking about, like the critic, which is a perfect example. We've all got, is anyone struggling to know what I mean when I say the inner critic?
No.
So we've all got one, but usually when it comes, we're like, oh no, I don't want that. You know what I mean? It's never welcome. So we play a game with it where we not only neutralise its sneaky way, we tie a bell to its ankle, but we also harvest it for actually the deeper thing that it's bringing. And so what we do is we do a meditation. Like you were interviewing that lump in you. You do a similar thing where you call your inner critic forward to come and sit next to you, and then you give it the pen. And you say, go on then, free rein, say everything to me you want to say. And you become their secretary. You give them the pen hand, and you for 10 minutes write all the shit it just says to you in your head. You just copy it down like a secretary. And then we play games with it, changing it into silly voices. You do that once you've written it down. Doing it in a French accent sounds amazing. Your inner critic talking to you in a French accent is priceless. Your inner critic talking to you as a cheesy game show host, totally over enthusiastic, is also genius. And it kind of ties a bell to the ankle. And then we interview. We make it a list out of all the things. If it says you're rubbish, you're lazy, you're ugly, or whatever it says, we turn it all into I statements. So it goes, I'm rubbish, I'm ugly, and you realise that you've just flushed out of the bushes with your inner critic a huge list of your unconscious beliefs that are running your life. I'm ugly, I haven't tried hard enough, I'm not doing this, no one likes me, whatever it is. You realise what's usually buried in the unconscious. Now you've got on the piece of paper, and you can take it to Byron Katie's website and dissolve it belief by belief. Using your inner critic to flush out your limiting unconscious beliefs, getting them front and centre onto a page, so that you can then go, do I actually want to live like that's true anymore? You then turn a habit into a choice. So it's powerful. That's just one game. Another one is where we ham up our suffering. We realise how much we manipulate with our suffering. We use our suffering to get our own way. I'm so tired, I've got so much to do, I don't like this part of my body. Or just looking upset till they notice. Who does that? The ultimate suffering manipulation. You want their attention, but you don't want to directly have the vulnerability to directly ask for it, because what they just said, what they did, I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. So instead you just turn your head at 3/4, look out the other car window, and then just emanate silence until they go, what's wrong? And then you go, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. But that way of using the suffering to get the thing going, rather than going, hey, can we have some attention, and being direct and vulnerable, and maybe risking a no. No, we elicit the yes by a million suffering ways. So hamming that up with each other, and playing with how we use our manipulations in a game form and pissing ourselves laughing, not only does it kind of makes you not do it again afterwards, because you've done it in such silly voices in such silly ways, that when you find yourself going to someone, oh, I'm so tired, you go, oh shit, I'm doing it again. You know, it raises your consciousness by playing silly games, so that it no longer rules your life.
So when's the next one?
Frome in like 2 weeks or something.
Okay, Somerset.
And then there's one in Manchester or Liverpool 2 weeks later in
Okay.
November.
Manchester.
Okay.
Is it Manchester?
Yeah.
Manchester Transforming Shadows, the last one of the year. Oh yeah.
Is it a day workshop?
It's 1 day. It's
One
very
day.
gentle. It's actually like today. You know, there's no real exposure. There's just absolute foolishness.
Fantastic. Over here.
Yeah, related to men and women and what you don't say, what you do say. I remember I did a workshop with you where you had the men go away and work out what it was they wanted to hear from the women.
Yeah.
And the women went away and worked out what they wanted to.
Yeah.
I remember the feeling of it, but I can't remember how would you summarise what there's 3 questions, I think.
Yeah, I feel like someone else should talk, but this is only one that only I can answer. I'll try and do it as quickly as possible. The game is, and it's the most healing game, we're doing it all the time at the moment, for the Adam and Eve project, which is the male and female wound. The men go away and they come up with 3 things that they want to tell the women that they want from women, that they want them to know that they want. And then women go away and they find 3 things they can all agree on that they want the men to know. And we pretend we're representing all the men and women of the whole planet. And it's all, you know, like we were kind of, and that process alone is quite juicy. Then everyone comes back and sits opposite each other, that becomes quite juicy. And then let's say it's an NVC exercise. The women, let's say they start, one of their number, let's say there's 10 each, they say to the men, we want more touch that doesn't necessarily have to lead to sex. That might be something they've decided they want the men to know that. And then they call upon the different men to say back to them what they heard. What are you being asked here? Which is pure NVC, non-violent communication. When I ask you that, what are you being asked? And they don't, and each man has to say back to the women what he thinks he's being asked. And between your mouth and my ear, it's amazing what comes back. And so there's so much clarification that by the end, the women are all satisfied that the men all get it. Good. Not that there's a yes or a no or an answer to the question, just do they understand the question? It's can be a long conversation. And then it's the men's turn, and they stand up and they go, we want your respectful and loving challenge as a teammate when you see me being less than my potential. And the women often start weeping at that point. They can't believe that's what the men want. But they really do. They just want it offered as a teammate with respect and love, not as a criticism, complaint, and love withhold, and a shutdown. So that whole conversation happens, clarifying. They ask the women, what did you hear? Well, you want us to challenge you, but you don't want to be whined at. You know, and everyone goes, exactly, and everyone has a really good chat about that. And then it's the women's turn again, you just do 3 each. And the healing and the weeping and the coming homeness and the wow, we're both the same. Like everyone realizes everybody wants the same thing, and there are so many preconceptions. One of the things that men or the women ask is, please see me as I am, not as your mother told you men should be, or how other men treated you or your friends. Please see me without the weight of all the ancestral crimes and violence. Please see me as not that man. And it's a big ask, you know what I mean? That's why so much healing has to happen before we can leave the men all back to the women. There needs to be like what they had in South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliations, where everyone confesses and cries and says, well, there needs to be a real purging of the amount of incredible violence and silencing and controlling that has gone on for the last 1,000 or more years. And there needs to be a healing of that before we all come back together. And that's what I'm interested in doing. Starting packaging meetings that anyone can take off. I can give one to each of you. And anyone who wants to hold one of those meetings that has a structure, we can just spread these meetings between men and women all over the world where these kinds of games happen, and everybody really is there for one reason, not to blame everyone, but to actually take a step towards stepping into our potential together.
Have you started this work, Jamie?
Yeah.
And what does it look like at the moment?
Like that game is a big one. It takes a whole day. Because then what happens is each go away and they make an inventory of the ways that they have wounded the opposite sex, ways they've manipulated, ways they've been violent, not always meant to women to, you know, everyone has been deceptive, or they've lied, or they've manipulated, or they've controlled, or they've been violent, you know, there's all kinds of different things. Everyone takes a real thing and they sit in pairs and they just go through it, and they are forgiven by if the other person The other one tries to, as much as possible, forgive them and hear them and hear the legitimate. You ask what was the legitimate need under that action, because every shitty action has some sort of legitimate thing that it was going for, but with poor choices and poor education and stupidity. But usually, even the shittiest action, there's a legitimate need underneath it.
Are you finding equally couples are signing up to do the work, or are you
Well,
finding it's the
not-
women that are rocking
sometimes
up?
couples or stray women men. Those workshops, which is called What About Us, they are becoming more even.
They're becoming more even.
Yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic.
I also like put shouts out to men and go, listen, come on. We've got 3 guys and 17 women. Please, will some of you come? Yeah. I have a group called we have a group called the Order of the Sacred Woodsman.
Yes.
Which
The
is
Order of the
Sacred Woodsman.
Woodsman.
It's
Okay.
600
yeah.
men
Yeah.
who are all interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's been some incursions by women trying to join that Facebook group.
Yeah.
Because obviously you all want a woodsman.
Yeah. Obviously.
So we have a new group called Woodsman for Women.
Yeah.
Where you,
Can we all join?
Yeah. You can talk to a woodsman at Woodsman for Women and ask questions, and the woodsman can ask you questions. It's a place where frank gender conversations happen.
Okay. Fantastic. And are you? Is there? Is this? Is it a guided process? Is that?
Yeah.
So you're using similar.
Facilitate. Yeah.
Change in that way.
And often when I'm doing this work, I often work with a woman. Many of my closest friends are women who facilitate. And I have different friends with different flavours. There's a brilliant permission goddess, freaky, kinky woman called Ruby May. She's not that kinky, she used to be. But she's kinkier than me.
Yeah.
So we have a workshop we run called Bitches and Bastards, where you go right into it. It's like for the hardcore. If you want to really get it all out, if you're up for a bit of high octane nonsense and
it's the deep dive one.
It's more of it. Deep.
Oh, okay.
It's more. It's just more exposing. It's like the opening circle. Everyone starts by introducing themselves and saying what their most recent ex would warn you about them. That's how we start, and it kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
It's really fun though, because when everyone's being a lunatic, it's fun to be in the asylum.
Yeah. What size groups are these, or you envisage them to be? What's your?
So far, they've always been like 20 to 60.
Yeah. Okay.
Having more than 20 men and opposite 20 women, it can get it's hard. Like 20 is like the maximum. 15 each is like about optimum.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Anyone else? Yes.
Can you mention a little bit about Smadi, or Smadi, however you pronounce it, meditation?
Me? I'm not your guy for that. I mean, it's one of the meditations where some people believe that if you meditate long enough, you can reach a state which is holier than most people living their lives, that in a state of kind of like disattached, blissful, service or whatever, and easier to do it in India than in Fifth Avenue. But that's never been something I've been interested in. It feels like to me those people are trying to avoid the messy human experience. I'm here for the human experience. I've got a long time to be a spirit in the ethers. For this 70, 80 years, I'm a messy human. I want to be a messy human. I want to have the full spectrum of being an ego, being a spirit, being holy, being unholy, getting it right, getting it wrong. I want the juiciness of the full spectrum. The angels are jealous of us. They don't have taste buds. I want to have that. I don't want to reach samadhi prematurely.
Thank you.
Kate, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, you've interviewed, also through your interviews, you've recently interviewed. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts. It's again looking at different states of consciousness, isn't it, and how that impacts our lives, and whether that is a path we
my initial
choose.
reaction was samadhi is for the gurus. It's not for me. I'd never. To me, it's that what I've read is that enlightenment that most of us almost all of us messy humans would never get to anyway. And that's when you asked that, that's immediately what came to mind with me. But I do believe whatever you get, like with meditation, whatever style it is, if it try it and try different styles. If one doesn't work, I'm rubbish at sort of trying to sort of sit and, my thoughts come even faster when I try and sit and meditate. But there are ways around it, and there are so many different styles, and it can help. And to me, it's just sitting in quietness, and maybe that is where I'm starting subconsciously to listen to that yin. And I think that's maybe what it is, that because, you know, if I try to blank my mind, the thoughts get even busier in my head. That's my